So how do we fit in? And why is it that some people find it easier to fit in amongst certain groups than others? These are questions that college students across the nation exploring the social organizations of their universities are asking themselves. While many may claim that the answer to these questions rely on an individual's ability to engage with an organization's members, history, and values, I would argue to you that within these organizations lie a set of schemas that determine what attributes these organizations are looking for. Now, these schemas are certainly varied, both in what the organization is looking for and in the impact of the exclusivity for those who don't meet certain standards. For some athletic clubs, the schema could be physical ability, but for Slam Poetry Club, it could be public speaking skills. Today, I want to talk about one of the most elusive institutions on college campuses, Greek fraternities and sororities, specifically how the organization is rooted in social and cultural schemas. There is no question that fraternities and sororities are lauded on the majority of college campuses. Despite histories of fatal hazing, psychological abuse, and sexual assault, every college student loves a good party. However, a big part about what makes these groups so appealing is their exclusivity. However, it is the motivations for this exclusivity that have severe racial consequences. In a particular example of Greek life at Dartmouth College, interviews with members revealed how this mainstream organization functions in a way analogous to how Victor Ray characterizes a racial structure. Members argued that they weren't excluding races, merely not that many other races came out to rush. This demonstrates Ray's theory of how the formation and processes within a racial institution are viewed as race neutral. One of the processes in the introduction stage of Greek life is rushing. The interactions between potential and current members, in which Dartmouth interviewees stated that they looked for someone who fit certain ideals, someone who would make them proud. Unfortunately, this has repercussions on minority group involvement since these standards are often white-oriented. One particular ethnic group that this impacts is Asian American women. During the rush process, there's an expectation of being outgoing. Getting to know people and establishing relationships is a requirement for membership into a Greek fraternity or sorority. However, there's also expectation for Asian Americans outside of the Greek sphere that they must conform to. Erica Lee argues that the model minority myth encourages Asian Americans to be passive in the face of racism. This extends beyond racial contexts. The nature of Asian Americans enjoying white acceptance into society under certain circumstances does not promote a culture of self-advocacy. As a result, there's a sense of discomfort in reaching out to Greek members, which reduces the amount of Asian American women who participate. Using Ray's definition of a racialized organization, there's a clear connection between the operation of an institution and the ability for its members to access material and social resources. Rooted in the Greek system is a hierarchical structure that determines how potential members navigate Greek resources. Even before being an official member, there are several obstacles that need to be overcome in order to gain access to their networks. These obstacles, which include financial obligations, previously established connections to Greek members, and time to attend events, are magnified for minority groups. Consequently, Black membership in Greek life is extremely low. In fact, as of 2014, the University of Alabama had only accepted one Black student into their sororities in their history of Greek life. Ray categorizes this distribution as indicative of a segregated system that maintains racial boundaries and deliberately channels certain resources. However, it is these resources that make being a part of Greek life so enticing. In The Privileged Poor, Anthony Jack emphasizes how membership in an elite institution increases social capital. He shows that class differences are less shocking than exposure to the practices of an elite academic community. This shock can have two very different effects. It can discourage the disadvantaged from joining similar groups, or for those able to gain access, provide them with interpersonal relationships that aid with achievement. A study meant to examine this interaction found that African American students involved in Greek life graduate college at a rate of roughly 90%. This is a drastic difference from non-member African American students who graduate at a rate of 25%. Despite this clear advantage, The racial climate that many Black students face, particularly in the introductory stages of Greek life, isn't conducive of a supportive network, something that shapes success in college. Now, these three authors identify how the standards for inclusion into a particular group, specifically Greek life, have racial consequences. When the standards are founded on white cultural practices and norms, minorities are far more likely to be excluded from participating. All three authors demonstrate how racial practices are strongly linked to access to resources. Jack particularly emphasizes how access does not guarantee inclusion or an even diffusion of that access. Even in small examples of minorities who have Greek letter membership, we see a more restricted distribution of resources, specifically the resource of time. Minority members in Greek life are often placed on a lower hierarchy and are subject to less personal agency within the organization. Ray also highlights this and shows how the collective efficacy of minority groups is reduced when they are in a racialized organization. Lee uses an example of increased prison time and the threat of deportation within the Asian American community to demonstrate how time is a volatile resource that is used to diminish minority social involvement. However, I propose, while these authors may observe similar patterns in minority group involvement in campus social life, they suggest differences in the reasons for exclusion. Lee seems to assert that Asian exclusion comes from the fear that they will threaten white success. On the other hand, Jack argues that underprivileged Black students are too culturally removed from white elite norms. So despite the overall response to minority groups pursuing Greek life membership being one that discourages participation and cements rejection into a traditionally white elite community, Lee's argument relies more on Ray's theory of resources, while Jack relies more on the symbolic meaning of segregated hierarchies. The arguments presented by the three authors, in conjunction with the analysis of the relationship between Greek life and racial practices, demonstrate how there's an expectation of assimilation in campus social groups. Now, while the degree of assimilating may differ among minority groups and may even prove to be ineffective in gaining acceptance, Jack, Lee, and Ray highlight how mainstream institutions rely on habituated practices that maintain white dominance. In order for Greek life involvement by minorities to increase, there's a clear need for the evolution of rushing practices and the redistribution of resources for minority members. I'm Sabrina Garcia, and thank you for coming to my TED Talk.